All right, hello, rockers, rollers, and heavy metal maniacs. It's the Meister from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. I am absolutely thrilled. I'm beside myself with excitement. I guess, as the English would say, I'm absolutely chuffed to be chatting with the one and only Mr. Dennis Stratton, of course, of the mighty Lionheart, and obviously of Iron Maiden and Praying Mantis and many other bands fame. So, Mr. Stratton, so nice to be chatting with you today. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, very well. In the UK at the moment, it's stopped raining and it's beautiful sunshine.
Oh,
So we're
nice.
happy.
Perfect. Very good. Very good. Yeah, it's we've got a bit of a windstorm here where I am in the States. I'm in Utah, and it's a little it's been windy and rainy and not very warm, which is it's not too fun for this time of
Yeah,
year.
we've had that since Christmas, so we don't want any more.
Yeah, but other than that, I've got got a fresh cup of coffee, and I'm talking to a rock and roll legend, so my day couldn't be better. So um yeah, this is great. So first off, I just wanted to congratulate you on the release of the Grace of the Dragonfly. I've got a copy here. Phenomenal
Oh,
album. I've been listening to it nonstop since it was released. Yeah, what a triumph. What a great
thank
album.
you very much. Thank you. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of Zoom interviews and promotion because, as you know, it's so hard for bands now to get on the map, to get up that ladder, we
Yeah.
call it, of just progressing with the getting the band and getting the album out there and getting people to know about the band. That it's always been an uphill struggle. So we've been doing a lot of interviews, a lot of promotion for the album, talking to lots of people. We've got lots and lots of great reviews and posts on social media, and even to the point of people like yourselves and magazines and radio stations actually listening to the songs and listening to the production, which is for us it's unusual because when you get someone that has to review so many albums in a week or a month, they tend to just give one or two songs to listen to and then move on. And you can't blame them because they're very busy, but we've had so many fantastic reviews and posts and com- feedback from all you guys talking about the lyrics and talking about the songs and the production, which is a big plus for us and for Steve Mann for the production. So
Yeah.
we're well pleased. Yeah,
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you couldn't listen to the whole. Yeah, I mean, from once Declaration starts, I'm all in.
yeah,
You got to listen to the whole thing. I don't know how you, especially it for
yeah.
those that don't know, it's a concept album. Essentially about World War II.
Well,
And
to be honest, it's not about World War Two.
oh,
Funny enough, that's what a lot of people tend to lean towards. But when we first started writing this album, it was a concept album for the people that served in World War Two.
okay.
Um, i.e., the women, the guys that knew that when they were going into service, that they wouldn't probably come back. It's basically a celebration towards the lives of all the people, all this, every man and woman that served in the Second World War. It's to celebrate what they did for us as a way of sacrificing their lives so we could live a freer life and not be under government or whatever rule. It was to celebrate the people that never came back, and that's why you've got little ships and things like that where Dunkirk is, it's the little ships that rescued them. So basically, I try and make that clear from the start because the album was started before Ukraine, Russia, before Hamas, and before Egypt, and everything else, Israel. Before all that started, we started as a thank you to all the servicemen that sacrificed their lives. So that was basically how it started. And I can see where you're coming from with the titles of the songs and some of the lyrics that tend towards leaning towards the Second World War. I get that, but it's just for us. It was a celebration of the people that sacrificed their lives, really.
Nice.
And we had to be very careful because we've got a lot of German fans, a lot of Japanese fans. We didn't want to upset anyone. So that's why we did it for, as I said, people who sacrificed their lives. So it wasn't leaning towards glorifying war, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's brilliant. And it's too bad we as mankind just continue to not seem to learn from any of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think just it's such a fantastically, as you mentioned, the production is beautiful. It's so melodic and just richly textured.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
as I say, it's only thanks to people like yourselves and other guys that are doing these radio stations and magazines that trying to get them, as I said earlier, the band on the map, because still, we're still not really well known after all these years from Iron Maiden going into Lionheart. Yes, a lot of Maiden fans know that I'm in Lionheart and I formed Lionheart in 1980, but even now, after 4 or 5 albums, we're still trying to get the band on the map of popularity, or people, millions have not heard of us. So it's trying to get the band name out there, make them more better known, if you know what I mean.
Right.
That's why a lot of people haven't heard the album, because we can only do so much for promotion. And what you just said, you put the album on, you can't take it off. It's such a great album. We've had great reviews, as I said, but it's still letting people know who we are and getting them to listen to that album,
Yeah. Which is, it seems insane to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, along with you, I mean, you put together this amazing band with all these amazing musicians and, guys that have come from all these other legendary bands as well, so yeah, it is amazing that you have to, it's this uphill fight, as you mentioned.
It was the same as 2020 when everyone was locked in, COVID, and we released the Reality of Miracles. That's a fantastic album. That's where we really learned how to work from home, where we didn't all have to get together to record an album. So during lockdown, that's where we learned a way of working through the internet, through telephones, through WhatsApp, and all these different files that you can send. And Steve was locked inside his studio in Hanover, in Germany. We were all locked in at home, and we found a brilliant way of working, doing the vocals, doing the guitar harmonies, doing the guitar solos. We found a great way of working. But unfortunately, when that album came out, July 2020, we weren't allowed to. Well, we don't really play live anyway, but it's just trying to get to play live. But we promoted that album on the internet, and not many doing interviews or face-to-face stuff, because everyone was locked at home.
Right.
So that suffered. The album did suffer through that, because we couldn't get it across to as many people as we wanted. But this one now, through Metalville Rebels, we've done quite a lot of promotion for it. So we're just hoping that it just doesn't disappear straight away. It keeps going and keeps going. So thanks to people like you that do these meetings and these interviews and keep promoting it, it keeps it going,
Yeah. And when it feels like there's an upward trajectory, with this album, it seems like there's a lot of buzz about it right now. So yeah,
Great.
Hopefully it'll keep doing, keep talking about it and keep promoting it, because it's such a great album. It's like I said, I've been listening to it nonstop since I got a copy of it. I've really enjoyed it a lot. It's what I like about it is many reasons. One, I mean, the lyrics and just the sound quality is great, but it's nice because it's kind of timeless, because it harkens back to earlier era music of like when I was younger in the the 80s, but then it still has a very modern sound as well. So I really like the blending of what you guys have done, and as you mentioned, Steve Mann's production work is great, and of course his keyboards and guitars are fantastic as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So and your mighty guitars, and what a great band you put together too. I mean, I know it's it's not necessarily new. You guys have been around for a little while. This lineup. But yeah, I was curious about that. Yeah, you've built a really strong band. You know, of course, Steve Mann from, you know, played with Schenker among other musicians, and you know, Clive, you know, played with Clive Edwards, played with you know, Uriah Heep of all,
Yeah, yeah,
or UFO, I guess it was UFO, right? Um, yeah, and just yeah, I mean, yeah. So how did you get this band back together, or get this band together? What kind of prompted that for you? You know, that was back, I guess, in 2016, right?
well, the thing was that when we did the first album, in me, Rocky, Newton, Steve Mann, and when we did the first album, Clive was with the band running through the songs in the studio, but we went for a session drummer, Bud Jenkins, for the first album because they were sending us to LA for Sound City Studios.
Hmm.
So and CBS that we were signed to got Kevin Beamish from REO Speedwagon to do the album and to produce it. And it all got a little bit silly because we didn't like the production on the first album. It was trying to make us into the new REO Speedwagon or whatever it was. CBS saw us as a new foreigner, but it was like Englishmen in America. And so, like, we were let down in a lot of stages there in '84. But me and Rocky and Steve still kept in contact, although we were still a band up until around about 96, 97, because it was in the year 1990, I joined Praying Mantis.
Yeah.
So it would have been up to 80, sorry, 10 years, 86, 87, 88, after we come back from America, that we decided to stay in contact, but just we were working with different artists, like Rocky and Steve were working with Schenker. And then I joined Praying Mantis for 15 years. But while we were touring with Praying Mantis, and I think we did about 8 albums and videos in Japan and live albums. And that was a fantastic 15 years with Mantis. But with me, Rocky and Steve still kept in contact. And every now and again, we'd write a few tunes together. And the record company in Japan decided to get us to do an album of all the old demos we had. Because Lionheart wrote a lot of songs because we were always in the studio. We had our own studio in Fulham. And so it was lots to do. So the record company wanted to release this album, Raiders of the Lost Archives.
Right.
And it was all the demos. So Steve sort of remastered them, cleaned them up. There was some on cassette. There was some on 4-track Porter Studio. So we did that, and we still kept in contact. Although we were still working with Praying Mantis right up until 2005. But it was only a couple of journalists in London asked us to do this Rockingham Festival when we did it, and they just said, you've got to do another album. You can't just do one album in 1984 and not. So we released Second Nature, and that had some old songs on it. And then we got Lee Small who's a great writer, and he started contributing. So on the Second Nature album, there's a few old songs, but there's also some new stuff that we put together very quickly. And that was when we thought, right, we can still work with these other projects, with Steve, with Schenker. Rocky's working with Grand Slam and a couple of other projects. I'm all over the place working in Europe with different bands, and Clive's always busy. And we realised that we had some kind of chemistry again, that we loved working together. So then we did Second Nature, and then straight away we knew that we could do it without meeting up. We got onto Reality and Miracles, and it was only doing Reality and Miracles that was when we said, look, everyone stick to what they're doing. You can still carry on working with Schenker, because Lionheart doesn't create an income. So basically, we got to live. So all the work we do outside of Lionheart is what we live on. Oh. And Lionheart is just a love. It's a project that we absolutely love. And so we never earn any money from Lionheart. So we can't live on Lionheart. So we have to do other projects. And so that's where we are now. I've just come back from a 2-month tour in Brazil. with the band in Brazil, and then I come back. I've just come back from Greece, Bulgaria, Germany, Holland, with Maiden United, which is another project I do, which is all classical acoustic Maiden. Rocky's still doing stuff with Grand Slam, so it's an easy way of working, if you know what I mean. I'm trying to put you into the whole picture. Coming up to, as I said earlier, coming up to present day, this is how we operate, and it's just, you know, doing that album, as you say, it's what we love, and that's that, and it's proved to us that we can carry on, as we don't have to stick together all the time in one country or in one studio or in one tour bus. Well, that's the next step. Where do we go from here after the album's been out a month? We want to play, we want to tour. Where do we get the money from to go and do gigs on the bus? You know, it's always been our dream to play live. We did this festival in Nottingham, and it was just brilliant. That's what would give us the bug again for Lionheart to start recording again, you know, after Second Nature. And yeah, we're doing a festival in October in Liverpool somewhere.
Oh, great.
Manchester, I think Manchester, Firefest. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be strange because we toured with Second Nature because we did Sweden Rock, and then we went to Japan. So we've already did shows doing songs from Second Nature, but we've never played any of the songs from Rowdy and Miracles or the Grace of the Dragonfly live. So it's going to be quite a lot of work to start going back over what you did to 2020 and 2020, and also what you did in 2023, 24, learning all the bleeding harmonies and all the solos again, and all the vocal harmonies. But it's something to get your teeth into, something that keeps you going, and that's what we're about. But getting back to your question, as Bruce Dickinson said quite a while ago, don't expect to see the band play live if you don't buy the record. And it goes a long way with what you said there, because he's 100% right. There's no musicians earn money from records now. So it's where do we find the revenue to buy them, not so much plane tickets, but even in the UK, where do we pay for the hotels? Where do we pay for the equipment to be ferried from one venue to another? You know, where do you start if you've got no income coming in? How can you go on tour? You know, so it's just so hard now because the record companies won't do tour support anymore. You have to try and get the money from someone else, somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's hard, you know.
It seems like it's I mean you know better than anybody, the music industry is a strange beast anyway, but it seems like it's
especially after lockdown.
Just now it's just so completely different from what it used to be, you know, especially in the 80s. You know, like you said, you know, record companies aren't, you know, helping bands tour anymore, you know, really at all.
Well, no, you know, Metalville in Germany, when we first spoke to them, going back a few years, you know, they were saying about, you know, it's best to do these festivals because you can hit more people with one show rather than a tour. But we've had no festivals. Yeah, and so I don't know what's going on at all. We ask them questions, but we don't know. So it's one of them things that we've got to try and do everything ourselves, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I can't imagine it's, in this day and age to try to travel, it's really expensive. And it seems like it's become even harder for bands, you know, I mean, especially globally, to try to tour. It's just become so incredibly expensive and difficult with visas and, you know, just to get into a country.
Well, now, you know, because of Brexit. Of course. Forgot about that. But as I say, as Bruce said, you know, if you buy the record, the band getting a bit of an income, we could put the money to good use by you know, getting a tour bus or getting some kind of way around it. But it's just bash your head against the wall. You know?
Yeah. So for those of you watching, go buy this right now.
Please.
Yeah, it's a great album, and there will be links in the description below. So you can pick up the album, and you will not be sorry. It's a phenomenal album.
Yeah.
You mentioned I wanted to circle back. You mentioned uh when you joined Praying Mantis in 1990. And that of course came about with a live show, and where you were basically you reunited with your old Iron Maiden bandmates, Paul Di'Anno and the late great Clive Burr. How did that come about? I know you've known the Praying Mantis guys for a long time, but how did that all happen? Because Praying Mantis at that point hadn't been doing anything.
Yeah. Well, no, because I knew the guys from Mantis in the 70s,
Hmm.
because we were all at the marquee, all doing the circuits around the pubs and that. And then when I joined Maiden in '79, Steve then said to me, "Look, the first tour is going to be the Metal for Mothers tour, and Praying Mantis are going to be the support on the whole tour." And I thought, great. So it was good meeting up with Tino and Chris again.
Yeah.
And we'd always got on well. And you can see the connection between Lionheart and Mantis, which was harmony guitars, three-part harmony backing vocals.
Yeah.
With the three of us, it's the same as me, Steve, and Rocky. So it was a nice connection. And then when Lionheart was bashing its head against the wall after the first album, so it would have been about 88, 89, when we realised that the album had been out a year or two, and CBS weren't doing anything. There was no tours. They told us we'd be going on tour. There was no tours, and in the end, it just sort of like dwindled away. Tino and Chris contacted me and said, "Look, a record company in Japan, Pony Canyon, come up with this idea that they want to fly." Praying Mantis was just Chris and Tino at the time.
Right.
So they asked Bruce Bisland, who was playing the suite at the moment, he's just retired. He was the third member of Praying Mantis coming in, and they said they want you and Paul Di'Anno to go. Well, at the time, he was a bit of a nightmare, Paul, because no one knew what he was up to, and he was all over the place. And so we took the chance. So the five of us went over to Japan. We rehearsed in the UK, and it was a mixture of what's on the Live at Last album, a bit of Maiden, a bit of Lionheart, and Praying Mantis songs. So we put this set together to record this live album. It wasn't all plain sailing, because you got Paul acting up a bit every now and again, and no one. It was very unpredictable.
Hmm.
And then when we came back from that tour and doing that live album, the record company, Pony Canyon, said, like, "We don't want to have anything to do with Paul anymore, but would you still be interested in staying with the record company as Praying Mantis and do a studio album?" And at the time, we didn't have a singer. Me, Chris, Tino, and Bruce went in the studio, and me and Chris done the vocals on the first album, the studio album, and it came out okay. But the record company loved it, and Praying Mantis still had a lot of Japanese fans like Lionheart from the '80s in Japan. So and then we had a problem with the singers. We had one singer in, then we had another singer. So that's how the thing with Praying Mantis started. And then slowly we went, well, this is good, because they wanted an album every 18 months. We were recording the albums. We were going out there on tour. And there was two albums we done, Forever in Time and Forever in Time. I can't think of that one. There were two, one after the other, and that's the only two albums with Praying Mantis that we used the same lineup, and that was Tony O'Hara on vocals.
Oh yeah.
He did two albums with us, and they're the only two albums with the same lineup: me, Bruce, Tino, Chris, and that was going well for 15 years, and it was only the fact that I was still doing other things with other bands as sort of little session stuff. And it was only Pony Canyon that said, unfortunately, due to the recession, that they were closing their rock department down, which meant we didn't have a record deal. So after 15 years, we decided, well, okay, we've had a good run. The record company closed their rock department, which meant we didn't have a label. And then me, Tino, and Chris said, you know, we'll just leave it for a little while and see what happens. So we never actually split up. We never had an argument. It was a fact that we were all mutual to say, we haven't got a deal at the moment, so we won't be doing another album. So basically, it just sort of fizzled out. Gotcha. And it was only when a little while, about 2 or 3 years after that, was the fact that Tino called me and said, look, we're thinking of getting the band back together again. But I was already committed doing other stuff, so I wouldn't have time. I didn't have time to go back. So they sort of went, they had my blessing, and then they went and they got another guitarist in, and off they went. And then again, they had problems with singers and drummers. It was only the fact that I was in Germany, I think, playing with a Dutch band called Harris. We did a Iron Maiden night, and Praying Mantis. We were headlining the Very Heavy Festival or something like that, or Keep It True. And Mantis were supporting us, and I was headlining it. So I got up with Mantis and done a couple of songs with them before I went on with the Harris guys. And it was great because it was reunion on stage, you know, in front of all this huge crowd. And it was great atmosphere. And I did 2 or 3 songs with them. And then when we went on stage, we were headlining it. And Tino came up to me afterwards and said, great band. And I went, yeah, they're fantastic musicians. And he said, would you think the drummer and singer would join Praying Mantis? So in the dressing room, I asked the drummer and the singer, I said, it doesn't involve what we're doing as Harris, but are you interested in, you know, they went, yeah. So ever since that night, they've been part of Praying Mantis. So
nice.
It's still a good little community of friends, you know.
Yeah, that's
it's
great.
A nice sort of connection.
Yeah, JC's a phenomenal singer.
I still go over there now and work with JC and Hans, the drummer, great drummer, Hans, and Mark, the guitarist. I still go and work with them. You know, as Harris, because that's the sort of thing I do with the Iron Maiden conventions, you know.
Okay.
So it's quite nice.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I saw a really cool photo of you at I'm pretty sure it was an Iron Maiden convention, and yeah, it was you and Steve Harris hanging out. It looked like it was fairly recently too. From what
that might have been a British Lions gig in Manchester.
Oh, okay.
Was we holding guitars?
No, you weren't. You had like you had a lanyard on. You both had lanyards, and you were just standing next to each other, and there were a lot of people around you.
You both had what on?
A lanyard.
What's that?
Like a backstage pass sort of a thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, funny thing is, since Steve's been touring with British Lions, over the last few years, I've been with Steve in Vegas, Boston, with the firefighters of Boston. I took them all to meet Steve and Nico, fire chiefs in Boston. They all came, but I also see him at some of the British Lions gigs, which is easier because he has more time to talk when he's doing a British Lions gig rather than a big stadium. You know, there's less people there.
Nice.
So, and I saw him in Manchester last year, but it was probably September, October time or something. I've got shorts on, and I took 2 guitars up to Manchester because I was doing I'm patron of the PTSD charity here in the UK.
Oh, nice.
It's a mental health awareness with PTSD, and I was doing a gig with a couple of friends of mine for the charity, raising money for the charity, which is what we do. And I took 2 guitars up. One was a West Ham guitar, and one was a normal PRS thing, Strat. And we took them up to Manchester, and Steve signed it, and had photos done with the guitars. So basically, with his signature on the guitars, it makes it a little bit more money, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To raise for charity, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see Steve quite a lot. So it's always good to meet up. And we were talking the other day about the end of the season over here on football. West Ham been a nightmare. So yeah, he's not so happy with football.
Yeah. Speaking of football, so you were a footballer as a kid, right? You in fact you were quite good and possibly.
Well, I thought I was. Yeah, Steve's fantastic. He's a great player, Steve. Um, no, it was we were playing when we were in our primary school. I'd always played football since the age of 5, and we won. 11-year-olds. We in here in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like over there, but when you're 11, you're in your last year of, we call it prep, primary school. You probably call it prep school or something, whatever. So then you're going to go into your big school, where you're in there till you leave and go and work. And I was playing all the time football. And when I was 11, we won everything. We won the league, we won the cup, we won another cup, which involved other schools. And so in the holiday season, 6 weeks holiday here in July and August, when I left the primary school, so I'm 11 years old, and I'm now waiting to start my secondary school, my grown-up school. And in that 6 weeks holiday, the West Ham scouts were looking at kids of 11, and they came over and watched our team win this cup. So in the 6 weeks holiday, they selected me and 2 other guys from the primary school that played in the 11 that won the cup. And they asked us to go over to a training school, like a training camp, for a week in the middle of the 6 weeks holiday. And they picked players, 11-year-olds from each school, from each team, and they all could come together on this week. Every day we went over there backwards and forwards. And that was when I realised I wasn't as good as I thought I was, because there were some kids there that were amazing. And then you realise just what the scouts are looking for. So that was my connection with West Ham schoolboys, an 11-year-old. And but although I didn't play professionally, I still played for a club. I've still played for my secondary school. We won the league and the cup with them teams, but just didn't make the grade for the West Ham scouts.
Gotcha.
So,
and then you discovered guitars.
Well, the funny thing was, at 16, we had a saying in Canning Town. Canning Town's a very rough area in East London. It's mostly, guns and bank robberies and fighting and things like that. And we had a saying in Canning Town when we were like 11, 12, 15, 14 years of age. To survive in Canning Town, you either had to rob a bank, you had to box, take up boxing, you had to play football professionally, or you had to play an instrument. Well, luckily for me, I chose the instrument at 16. Well, a lot of my friends did choose bank robbing and fighting, drugs, and most of them are either dead now or in prison. So it was a rough area to live in, and I was glad I chose the guitar.
Yeah, that's good. Lucky
Yeah.
for all of us too. So that you did that. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and you I think what was your first band was what, Harvest? Was that the name of the band?
Yeah, well, when I was about 15, I started going to a pub in Canning Town called the Bridge House, and there was a band in there called Power Pack, and I've got to tell you, so it would have been, if I was 15, 14, 15, 52, 62, 1967, so I would have been sort of 14, 15, and I walked into this pub, absolutely ram-packed, smoke, and I could just see through the smoke. And on the stage was this guitarist, Terry Noonan, playing a Les Paul Standard, I think a 58 or 59. He had four 4x12, this is in a pub, four 4x12 cabinets behind him, and two 50-watt Marshalls. Next, on the outside of that was a Hammond C3 Leslie on the side of the cabinet. Next to him was a bass bin, then the drummer. Next to the drummer was another bass bin with a bass player. And on that side was the keyboard player with another Leslie. So he had both sides of the stage. And they played Spooky Tooth, Uriah Heep, Deep Purple. Every band I grew up to listening to, Highway Star, the Spooky Tooth numbers, they were amazing. And that's where I learned to play the guitar, because I used to stand there in front of him. I shouldn't even be in the pub, because you had to be 16 or 18. I think I was 15, but I used to stand there and watch him play, and I'd see little things he did on his fingers. And I only lived around the corner to the pub, so I used to run home and get in the bedroom and just try and remember what I'd seen, where his fingers went. And every night I was there 7 nights a week.
Wow.
And it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I did all my learning just watching him, the chords that he played. I picked up, didn't have a guitar book. Computers weren't invented, just a record player. And then the third Led Zeppelin album on with the needle on, and then keep putting the needle back, learning different riffs until the record was scratched, the buggery. But yeah, that's how we ended up sort of learning. And I owe it all to Terry Newman, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's so cool. I didn't know. Yeah, that I was curious if you had taken lessons or gone to school or yeah, just
And the
self-taught.
funny thing is, when you're learning stuff like Child in Time and some of the Deep Purple in rock songs or Led Zeppelin, when you put the record back so many times, it then jumps because you've scratched it. It's worn it out. And so then you put coins, like a penny or two pennies on the needle just to push it down a bit heavier, so it didn't jump. But then you just keep learning, keep practicing. So that's how I learned. Started learning at 15, 16.
Nice. That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah. So your first band Harvest, and then of course you formed Remus Down Boulevard. And you guys had
we had a band. Funny enough, we had
sorry.
a band before RDB. We had a band. When we went from Harvest, we went with a keyboard player, and the band was called Wedgewood. And we were doing loads of Wishbone Ash songs, and we also charged a few Yes songs, Long Distance Run Around, and Roundabout. With the keyboard, you could do it, when we were really concentrating on these really sort of mad riffs with Yes. And we used to be resident of Bridge House, so I went from watching my teacher up there, Terry Newman, playing, learning, and then when they got a little bit older and the youngsters come up, we then took their place as a resident band in the Bridge House.
Nice.
So there I was standing where he stood, and then we met. Dave Edwards, a good friend of mine. We've known one another since we were about 11, and he had a band, and he used to rehearse downstairs in a pub hall, the Windsor Castle downstairs, and we used to rehearse upstairs. There was always this bit of competition between us with the two bands. And when we got the residency in the Bridge House as Wedgewood, I then said to Dave, look, Dave, I think we were like 21 now, 20, 21. So I've always wanted to have our own band doing our own music, our own songs. He said, so have I. So I said, so why don't me and Steve Goff, the bass player, we'll not finish with Wedgewood. We'll put a band together with 2 guitars, get a drummer in, and we went straight back to the Bridge House. We've been together about 3 or 4 weeks, and we wrote about 6, 7 songs. We also did a load of covers, like Wishbone Ash stuff that we did. And then we went to the governor, Terry Murphy, at the Bridge House. I said, can we carry on the residency, but it'll be RDB, Remus Down Boulevard, instead of Wedgewood? And he went, do what you want. You pack the pub out, do what you want. So we had a residency 2 nights a week as RDB. That's where we went on to join forces with, Jonathan King come down and wanted to sign us to his UK record label, but he ended up in prison because we knew that he was a bit dodgy.
Wow.
So then Ron Popham, who was our manager at the time, he introduced us to Colin. He managed Status Quo and Rory. Colin Johnson. He managed Status Quo and Rory Gallagher. And first thing we did was he said, right, you need to be exposed. We need to get out there. So he put us on a European tour with Status Quo, and it was the biggest learning step of my life, because we come from playing to 300-400 people in the marquee to 250 people in the Bridge House. We jumped on a ferry. We went over to France to the first show. I can't remember where it was. To 80,000 people in a huge ice rink, ice skating, ice hockey stadium. And I think it was either in Germany or France. And we went there and we looked around this place, and it was frightening. And I'll never forget the first gig we did with them. All our gear was set up by their road crew, and I was shaking so much I couldn't plug the lead into the amp. And the guy, the roadie, one of Quo's road guys, roadies, came on with a torch, and he grabbed me a hand to stop me shaking. And plugged the jack plug into the Marshall. I went, thank you. And he went, when the lights came on, we looked like it, and we just went for it. And once we started playing, it's fine. But what an experience, going from a pub to that in 2 days. And we did the whole tour with them. That was 3 months. We came back for a couple of weeks, and then we went back and did only France. And it was absolutely brilliant, and learned so much from them, with the crowd participation and the being professional on a huge stage. You learn so much by watching the way they work the crowd. It was just brilliant. We learned a lot then. Yeah. It sort of give you the bug to do better, go better.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you've even kind of done RDB stuff in more recent times, right? Like you've actually kind of got back together and done some shows with those guys, right?
Well, we always did. The 15 years I was with Mantis, all the years I was with Lionheart, the 4 of us grew up together in Canning Town. So whenever I was living in Canning Town at the time, before I moved out, but even moving out to Romford to Essex, we still kept in contact. The Bridge House closed down. They built a flyover on the motorway, and but because we were still really good friends, we were able to, when we were home for a few weeks, whatever, we'd go phone up a pub and say we want to do a reunion, and they'd have us straight away because we had such a following in East London and Essex that so we get together now. We're more settled, as you say, you can do a lot of work from home now. So I'm traveling a lot now. We're doing the European stuff, and wherever we go, like Brazil. But whenever I'm home, we'll do a reunion together. We're doing one next week. I think it's the 19th.
Oh, cool.
On a Sunday afternoon in a big pub in Essex somewhere. That'll be 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it'll probably be packed. So we just get together because we just love playing the old songs,
Nice. Yeah, like of course, Gun Runner was kind of the big hit for you guys, right? And now it makes more sense to me from what where you grew up. I didn't realize what a rough area that was, and that lyrics, that makes a lot more sense now. Like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
With Mantis, I wrote Best Years of My Life with one of the songs on the Mantis album, and that's all about growing up in East London, Canning Town. And with Second Nature, with Lionheart, I wrote 30 Years, which was basically it was 40 years that I've been touring, playing guitar. But 40 years didn't sound as good as 30 years, just for the chorus. So I called it 30 years. 40 didn't roll off the tongue so well. So, and the words in that are all about Praying Mantis, Lionheart, East London, the Marquee, the Bridge House. All the lyrics that Lee penned together involved all my childhood, going up to joining Maiden.
Nice, very cool. Yeah. So speaking of Maiden, so of course, from what I understand, is Steve Harris came to a RDB show and saw you guys.
They used to come every Sunday. Yeah, I think they must have been rehearsing because him and Dave used to come down at roughly the same time, about 9:30, 10 every week, I think. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So he, I guess, approached you after a show and said, "Hey, do you want to join?"
No, no.
No.
Funny
Oh, no.
enough, when they came in the pub, I always remember Steve. They both had the leather jackets on. Dave always had his Iron Maiden t-shirt on, but they were over at the Ruskin, which was funny. The guy that run the Bridge House, Terry Murphy, Joe Lucy, who was his brother-in-law, run the Ruskin Arms. So they were sort of brother-in-laws. And I always remember Steve and Dave coming in the pub, but Steve always had his West Ham scarf, and that's how he stood out. And always used to wave from the stage. I never knew their names, nothing. And in the end, I got a telegram. I was coming home on a bus from Stratford, and this girl come and sat next to me on the bus, and she said, "I'm sorry to bother you, but you're Dennis, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." She went, "I'm Lorraine. I'm Steve Harris's girlfriend." I went, "Steve Harris?" She went, "From Iron Maiden." I went, "Oh, right." She said, "They're trying to contact you." So I wrote down my address on a bit of paper and give it to her. And I never put two and two together, thinking it's the guys from the pub. I didn't know that was them because I didn't know their names. And then I got a telegram through the post office. I got it framed indoors. Dennis Stratton, RE Iron Maiden. Please call this number, Rod Smallwood, on this number. So I went to the phone box because we didn't have a phone. And I called this number, and Rod Smallwood picked it up. And he said, "Yeah, can you make your way down to the Ship pub in Wardour Street, where we all used to meet to go to the marquee? And the guys want to meet you there." And when I walked in, there was Steve and Dave from the Bridge House. So I was used to, right? God, didn't know. And yeah, it's us, Look. So we sat down, and just the two of them, and talked about them signing this big deal with EMI. I'd never heard any of their songs. I was too busy with RDB. And they gave me the Soundhouse tapes, a couple of cassettes in the Soundhouse, and they said, "Just have a listen." And I explained to them straight away that the two bands that I'd been in, which was Wedgewood and RDB, were harmony guitars and backing vocals. So would that suit what you're doing? I said, "Because I haven't heard any of the stuff you've done." And they said, "We want you to listen to the songs. There's only three of us in the band now because they got rid of the drummer and they got rid of the other guitarist. So there was Deano and then Steve and Dave. And they said, listen to the songs, see what you can do with them, see how you're approaching." So I went home, and there was just one guitar, very punky, very aggressive, with a voice with Paul growling. Wasn't my kind of music. I was more into Wishbone Ash, melodic, AOR, White Snake stuff and all that. And so I started working on the songs, finding the way I worked with Lionheart and Praying Mantis was the harmony guitars. And so instead of the riffs on the tapes being just one rhythm guitar and one doing the riff, it was me doing the harmonies to it. So I worked on about 3 or 4 songs, and they were rehearsing over in Hollywood Studios, which is sort of like North London near Stone Newton. And I went over there, and we're in the studio, and there's drum kit, no drummer, and me, Steve, and Dave. And I said, "Look, this might not be what you're looking for, but we can run through it, and I'll just add." And they were knocked out because silly little things like Rothschild with a I was doing the harmony in the riff, and they're going, "It sounds so different, but not different." And they couldn't. In a way, it was complementing the songs, but just making them bigger and wider production. And then it went on with things like Prowler, with the little riffs. Just imagine, rather than talk about every song, everywhere where there was a riff, there was an harmony. And that's what I did. And some of the different inversions of the chords, whereas on Remember Tomorrow, Dave is playing like a low E minor to the F, back to the E minor. I'm playing little high bits up here to separate the two guitars to make it sound wider, make it better sound. And they were over the moon, and they said that's brilliant. And when I did a few harmony vocals, well, at the time Paul wasn't there, so we were just running through guitars. And then of course when Phantom came, I was in my own little element there, my own little dream. I was at home working all these harmonies and all that. I think I went over the top a little bit, but they were quite impressed. So that's how the harmony guitar style was introduced to Maiden.
Cool.
And yeah, it sort of caught on more and more as we worked on more songs that didn't make the first album, might have made the second album.
All right. So yeah, you had to move space, right?
Well, what's happened, sorry for the delay for the break, but we were an hour or so into the interview, and I've had to come to another part of the studio because they were going to do some work in that office. So now I'm back here after that quick move from next door to in here. So I'm okay again now.
Okay. Excellent. And we were just chatting about you were talking about the adding all the harmony guitars, going through the list that they had given you, and you had talked about that some of those songs ended up on later things on the second album and even beyond that.
Yeah, well basically, Victor, what happened was when I finally got the whole collection of songs, there were quite a lot. It wasn't only the Soundhouse tapes. I started with them because they were the most popular. The Prowlers and the Rothschilds and Running Free and things like that. But basically what was happening is that the band were rehearsing. Once we got, as I said, once I brought Clive into the band, we were able to rehearse as a band with the drummer as well, and Paul showing up at the rehearsals. But the main thing is that when I got the whole collection of songs, there was stuff there, very old tape recordings, but you've got to remember that before I joined the band, Iron Maiden were touring with the old lineup a lot around England, around the UK, Scotland, and all that. And so that's how they built their fan base up. But what they were doing, they weren't just supporting; they were going out as like a headlining in clubs in Middlesbrough and Preston and Manchester, Liverpool. So they needed an hour and a half of songs if you're headlining, maybe a bit longer. So what happened, we got the whole collection of songs, and Steve decided that we needed an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, hour and whatever, for the Metal for Mothers tour that was on its way in the next month or so.
Oh, cool.
So Praying Mantis was supporting us on the Metal for Mothers tour. Neil Kay was on that tour. Sorry, that's my phone again. Neil Kay was there playing his records and a little bit of a spot. So basically our set lasted for an hour and a half. And in the collection of the songs were both albums, first and second, apart from Killers. Steve was, that Killers came in a little bit later. I'm sure, I remember working on Killers, all the songs, but Killers was not finished. I know they changed some lyrics in it at one time, but we started rehearsing it not at that point. It was after the first album was recorded. So basically, we were playing the first two albums, plus I imagine some singles, I suppose some B-sides. I can't name them all, but there were a lot of songs that we played in the live set, more songs than both albums. We never knew at the time what order of songs was going to be on the first album or second album until halfway through the Metal for Mothers tour. I imagine what we did, or Steve did, was felt the ones that went down the best live that would be the best for the first album, and also holding a couple back for the second album that also on equal par went down well live. So halfway through the Metal from Others tour, off we go to the Kingsway Studios. We visited a couple of people like Andy Scott from Sweet, because it was a very important point that Steve made, was that the production he was looking for. He always used to buy Sweet glam rock singles. And I sort of looked at him a bit peculiar, and I said, Sweet, you know, like, man. He went, yeah. He said, have you ever bought any Sweet singles? I went, no, because they're glam rock. And he said, well, listen to the B-sides. He said, all the B-sides are pure heavy rock, virgin on heavy metal. So of course, I went out and bought a couple, and he turned it on the B-side, and there was this powerful heavy rock band, you know, nothing like glam rock. And it was, so he asked, that's where I found out about Sweet and the B-sides. So, and then we went to Andy Scott's studio, but I don't think they could arrange, it was either the time of the recording, whether Andy was free, or whether or not Steve changed his mind. I don't know. It was between Steve and Rod. So then, of course, he settled on Will Malone. He's an old-fashioned producer, doesn't really hands-on, sits at the desk with his feet up. The engineer did most of the work. And so we had a break from the Metal from Others tour, went in the studio and did the first album, which Steve wrote out the list of songs that we would be recording. But as I said, it was already, we were already routining them, because we had to learn them for the whole Metal from Others, because it was an hour and a half set. So that's how we come to be playing both albums.
Wow, that's really cool. Did you have a sense at that time of how kind of revolutionary the music was, and the sound? I mean, did it kind of impact you at that time, going, wow, we're onto something pretty amazing?
No, not at all. Funny enough, what I did notice was that it was so bloody loud, because I'd come from a sort of AOR rock blues band, harmony guitars like Wishbone Ash, and Wishbone Ash weren't heavy metal, heavy rock. So we come from a more melodic kind of band, and I know it was loud in the studio rehearsing, but Jesus, when we went out on the beginning of the Metal from Others tour, it was like a wall of sound. You know, you couldn't hear the vocals, you couldn't hear. It was just stun volume. So yeah, but I did realise one thing, that they'd done their homework, because the amount of miles they did in the old transit van and the Green Goddess around the UK over the couple of years before I joined them, that they were touring, doing all the clubs and pubs, doing all the hard work, they built up one hell of a fan base. Yeah. And that went to show with EMI, when EMI came down to the studio when we'd finished recording the first album, and they went, you know, advanced orders have gone potty. So that was in 79, you know, so end of 79, early 80s. So you're looking at dedicated fans even in them days, so many thousands of them, and also you had to sell a lot of records to get number 4 in the charts. Yeah. So EMI knew it was going to be in the top 5, but we didn't know we were going to go to number 4. And also, it was the advanced orders that the EMI could roughly guess where the album was going to be sitting, and we were over the moon. So I knew the band was going to be big, not as big as they are now. I didn't think that would ever happen, but I knew they were going to be going places, because the size of the advanced orders for the first album, I knew they had a lot of fan base there.
Wow, yeah. I was curious about the, you know, as far as like the artwork with, you know, Derek Riggs' artwork, and specifically when you guys released, you know, when Iron Maiden, when the Sanctuary single was released, and the artwork for that, was there any blowback? I mean, of course, that's, you know, Eddie standing over the murdered Margaret Thatcher. And at that now that might not be so shocking, but I would imagine, in 1979, 1980, that's a shocking image for a very conservative country.
Yeah, well, where that came from, yeah, we basically played on that because in the early days of the Metal for Mothers tour, the band was called Iron Maiden, so it was linked to the Iron Lady, which was Margaret Thatcher, and it got political because we went to the Madame Tussauds, to the Chamber of Horrors, to do a big photo shoot for a whole day. So they closed Madame Tussauds. But while we were there, the photographers were very clever because when they'd got all the shots they needed downstairs with the guillotine and all the torture instruments and the morbid stuff with, blood and guts, when we were walking around Madame Tussauds, there was Margaret Thatcher, because she was Prime Minister. Margaret Thatcher sitting at her desk. So I imagine you have seen the photo from the Madame Tussauds photo collection. That
Yes.
There we are, all sitting down around Margaret Thatcher, and she's at her desk sitting there like that. A little bit of a piss take, tongue in cheek, but very good publicity, because after we had that photo taken, the Metal for Mothers tour was already booked and everything was going ahead, and we got a very polite message from let's say a little group, big group of people from Ireland, Northern Ireland, with 3 letters. And because we were called Iron Maiden, because it related the Irish terror group to the Iron Lady, we were asked very politely not to tour Ireland.
Oh, wow.
if because of our own safety.
Yeah.
The threat was quite serious. We didn't care because we didn't do it for a political stunt. It was just a photograph of, I've always voted Labour, working class Labour. My mum and dad, my granddad, it's always been Labour family, growing up in East London. But yeah, it was a big publicity thing. So they carried that on with Sanctuary and got away with it. It was one of the things that, even with Maiden United now, we opened the show with Maiden United, the acoustic classical version of the Maiden songs. We opened that with a young girl singing Iron Maiden, but it's sung completely a different way. You can Google it when we've done the interview, but it starts off with a recording of Margaret Thatcher talking about the Iron Lady, and then she starts talking about, oh, someone called me the Iron Maiden. And it's all publicity. So they're still using it up till this day. So we opened the show with Maiden United with that recording of Margaret Thatcher talking, making this speech. And it's very funny if you listen to it with Maiden United. You can Google it when you've got 5 minutes. But it's very funny. But yeah, we got a lot of publicity out of Margaret, Maggie. And so that's where that story comes from. It was one of those things that just a photo session,
That's funny. Man, that must have been such a whirlwind of a time, because you join the band, you learn all these songs, you record the first album, which, like you said, goes to the top, gets in the 4th spot. First time Iron Maiden's ever been on television, you're with them on Top of the Pops, and that was around that same period of time. And then you guys jump on a tour with Kiss.
Well, no, first it was with Judas Priest.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Because what happened was that it was, as you say, perfectly correct. It was one big rush. And once we'd learned the set for an hour and a half, Metal for Mothers, we did the album. The album was finished. We went back out on tour to finish, excuse me, to finish the Metal for Mothers tour, because we still had to go back to the places that we hadn't got reached because we had to break to do the album. EMI said we've got to record it now if we get it out at this certain date. As we were finishing the Metal for Mothers tour, so you can imagine now the band's done 35 shows, and we're now tight. All the rust, all the cobwebs, all the old songs that were sounding so big with the harmony guitars now, backing vocals were coming into work with me and Steve singing, with Paul. The band were then cooking. It was like, do it with our eyes closed now. We didn't have to worry about, well, Steve didn't have to worry, but me and Clive didn't have to, and any nerves went out the window. And then all of a sudden, the Judas Priest tour comes along. Was a little bit awkward due to Paul saying something about Priest that they didn't like, because that's how he used to be. He still is, I think. So he upset KK Downing, and when we met the band, I got on really well with Glenn Tipton. Whenever I'm playing with any big band or any support band, I have utmost respect for the support band and for the headlining band. Always treat them with lots of affection and admiration. And I met Glenn Tipton, we got chatting. We hit it off really well, because same as on the Quo tour with RDB, with Remus Down Boulevard, we hit it off well with Francis Rossi and Rick Parfitt. So we went out drinking with them. And you sort of get a rapport. And so, yeah, when we met up with Priest, they weren't too happy with the band. KK wouldn't speak to anyone. That meant that we could only have half the lights in the big shows, in the big Hammersmith Odeon or Rainbow, or where Glasgow Apollo. So what happened was that I used to get on well with Glenn. We got through the tour. Then I realised when that tour kicked off that when I looked out to 4,000 people in the Hammersmith Odeon or wherever we played, I realised that half the crowd had Iron Maiden shirts on. So it was hard for Priest, because they were slightly going off the boil at the time. And I think that's what wound KK up, because Paul was saying, we're going to blow them up the stage or something like that. Anyway, but when I did notice the crowd, 50% Iron Maiden shirts. So we did that tour, and that was another step up the ladder. Then we did, of course, the Reading Festival, and 100,000 people. Wow. And although we were co-headlining with UFO, they were on that stage, we were on this stage. When we looked out, you know, I'm no disrespect to UFO, they're one of my favourite bands, even from the age of 18, 19, 20. They were never heavy metal. I just loved their songs. Yeah. I loved Schenker's playing as a kid. They had rock songs like, you know, you don't class Bad Company as heavy metal, but they hit that sort of tag. And then when we did the Reading Festival, there's one of my favourite photos is we went out on stage. It's pitch black, and they said to us, "There's about 100,000 out there." You couldn't see the end, but they were all Maiden. Most of them were Maiden.
Wow!
And we went out and we did 2 songs. And there's one of my favourite photos. There's a photo taken by Ross Halfin from behind my Marshall stack, looking out to the crowd. And we'd done 2 songs. And I remember Dave Lights used to have these aircraft lights all around the stage, facing out to the audience. We'd had that on every show. And I went up to the mic and I'm talking on the mic. And Ross has run behind my man, but he's got his camera. And I've gone, Dave, Steve was standing at his mic stand. And I just went, Dave, we can hear them, but we can't see them. I went, light them up. And he's hit these floods, these aircraft lights. And as far as the eye can see, and Ross took the photo.
Wow.
And I've got it in colour at home. It's a really lovely shot. And my bum looks nice in it anyway. You can't see our faces, but you know who we are. And yeah, the crowd, it was a sea of faces and arms and all that, all lit up. And that was fantastic. And then, of course, we were on a high. And then come along, you're going on tour with Kiss. You know, wow, this now we're going to go places.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, if I carry on with the story, we didn't have much time to go home and pack. It was again a summer coming, a 1980, and then I realised when we got to Europe, it was then I realised how big Maiden had come in 1 year or 9, 10 months.
Yeah.
Because as we drove into Italian football stadiums, as we drove into German football stadiums or wherever we were playing, everyone outside the venue in Italy laying on the grass, Iron Maiden t-shirts. And as we drove in, there were Iron Maiden shirts everywhere. And that's the reason why when Kiss come to England, they realised when their management saw how many Maiden fans in Europe there were after a couple of shows, they then told Rod Smallwood and EMI that they didn't want to support them on the English, in the UK shows.
Oh, wow.
So when we was in, I think we was in Italy, in Lido Jesolo. It was opposite Venice. It's a little holiday resort in Italy. And Venice, you could see Venice across the water. You got a taxi boat to Venice. And we were told, boys, you're not going anywhere for 10 days or 8 days. You're going to be staying here at this hotel on the beach, so have an holiday, because Kiss don't want you to play in the UK, because they were concerned about the size of our crowd, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially at that time, Kiss was kind of, their popularity was in decline, in 79, 80. So, and yeah, and like you said, I mean, yeah, Iron Maiden's on this, skyward trajectory.
Yeah, although Maiden had only been together for just under a year, and that's the thing. The funny thing was, we were told so many stories from Rod Smallwood and different people about Kiss. So they won't talk to you. They're American. They're security. Blah 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 blah. When I met Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley backstage, they couldn't have been a nicer. Even Ace Frehley and Eric Carr, always polite, always said hello. Ace was really shy. He was very quiet. He never really said a lot. But Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, they were like your new best friends. They took me and Dave Lights out October the 9th in Stockholm. Yeah, Stockholm. Yeah, October the 9th, 1980, my birthday. And they took us out to a restaurant for my birthday for dinner.
Oh, nice.
And fantastic. Yeah, no makeup, nothing. They just booked a restaurant and took us out. Absolutely fantastic. I've got so many photos with Gene and Paul. And it was great. Even to the point of, I think it was either that day on my birthday, we were coming to the end of our show, and I did this solo at the end of, me and Dave swap over this solo, and I'm at the front of the stage, and I'm doing this solo, and the crowd just got louder and louder, and in the end I thought, Jesus, listening to that crowd, I've got my eyes closed, and I'm just giving it my best, as mad as I can go to the end of this song, and the crowd was just going absolutely ballistic. The screaming and the cheering was deafening me. And then I realised when Paul Stanley put a bucket over my head, because he walked on behind me with a bucket and everyone thought it was full of water. But because I'm trying to damage the equipment or the guitar, so he had an empty bucket, but he carried it on like this. And I'm playing, and a lot of the fans knew it was my birthday. And because the crowd are all cheering him, not me. And then louder and louder. So I'm thinking, I'm really going, oh, this is fantastic. It was the best night of my life. All of a sudden he put a bucket over my head. I went, no. And he's going like that. It was brilliant. And that's how close we were. He gave me a fire helmet, white fire helmet from Detroit, with all their signatures on, the one he wears on stage with the Kiss logo. He gave me that as a present, as a keepsake for my birthday. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Do you still have that? Do you still have the helmet?
Unfortunately, no, I did have it in the loft, but then I moved house and I got divorced, and some of the stuff I had there went missing. So,
Oh, okay.
you
Oh,
know,
that's too bad. That's great though. That is
same
a
with
great
me.
story.
I think it went with my red leather trousers. I think that it went with them.
Nice. Somebody out there is wearing a
Yeah,
fire helmet and some red leather trousers right
yeah,
now, running
yeah,
around. That's
yeah,
funny. I love the fact that yeah, Paul Stanley stuck a bucket over your head in a show. That's funny. I'd never
yeah,
heard that story before. That is great. Are
yeah.
there? I wonder if there's got to be some photos of that out there somewhere. I'll have
Yeah,
to
I've
look
not
for that.
seen any of it, but yeah, I remember him coming on stage.
Oh, that is great. So just not too long after, so I guess just a couple months after that, you left the band, you left Iron Maiden, and then shortly after that you formed, that's around the time you formed Lionheart, right?
Well, yeah, I think what just to make it clear that what it was like a mutual agreement because Rod was. I have to tell you, I have to say this for the people that haven't heard the story, but I've said it a million times. Is the fact that when I'm not working with Iron Maiden, I like my own space. I like me bit of freedom, a bit of peace and quiet, and I listen to all kinds of music. Eagles, George Benson. I love a bit of soul. Luther Vandross. Just love easily listen. And Little River Band from Australia and things like that. Anything like with harmony vocals and the Eagles were my favourite and all that. And I also listened to Whitesnake, David Coverdale. We toured with David in the 80s with Lionheart and Whitesnake. And he's one of my favourite singers, Paul Rodgers, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it got a little bit strained, the relationship between me and Rod, not the band, because me and David Lights used to, like for instance, when we was in Italy on the break from Kiss, me and Dave Lights used to go out and disappear for a day and all that. Although Rod wasn't there, he got feedback from different people. And they portrayed it as that I didn't want to mix with the band, which was absolute rubbish. The fact is that I had a wife and child, and when I come home after a few months, I'd like to go and see him. And Rod wanted to keep the band together all the time. And we used to have these arguments, and I'd say to him, look, Rod, you can't wrap the whole five of us in cotton wool. We need a bit of space. We
Yeah.
need a bit of freedom. And he couldn't understand that. And then through the Kiss tour, I still do it now. And I did it all with RDB and I did it with Lionheart. I still do it now. I sometimes travel with a road crew because it's funny. You know, they've got a big bus, a big coach, and you're talking to different people, not just a band. And he used to get angry the fact that I didn't travel to the venue on that morning with the band. I even went in one of the trucks once with a driver driving all the equipment up in the mountains. It was fantastic. And then a couple of people from the record company were on tour with us. And Gabby, the A&R manager, we were chatting about it. She said, I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to, it was it was only about 100 miles to the next show, 150. She said, why don't you we'll travel in my car. I said, if you go in your car, I want to see a bit of the countryside. So she went, okay. And I said, I'll buy you lunch. Okay, we got to the venue. We were there before the band. Rod gets angry that I didn't travel with the band again. So it became a bit of a black spot, if you call it, with Steve. It was causing problems. Then Rod started telling me that I couldn't listen to the Eagles. I couldn't listen to music. And I tried to explain to him that if I listened to Motor, it was no reasoning. If he heard my cassette player coming from my room, and I've got Steely Dan on, you know, listening to a Toto, he'd bang on the door. People can hear that, you know. So in the end, I give up, and it caused a bit of a strain on the relationship with me and Steve. So at the end of the Kiss tour, I just said, what do you want me to do? And they were saying, you know, you're doing your job as a guitarist and backing vocals 10 times more than we ever thought would be good. You know, it's better than anything we imagined. Ah, this is personality thing. It's nothing to do with personality. It's what I listened to, and that's what who I travel with. And it was every little thing he became angry with. So I think he just didn't like me, or he got fed up with trying to change me.
Yeah.
And I just needed my bit of space. And the funny thing is, after all them years, I went to one of the first Doningtons, one of the first downloads, and with the band, and there's me and Steve in the bar, in a big marquee at the back of the stage, in download, listening to the Eagles. The Eagles are playing on the in the marquee music system, and I'm standing there watching the TV because I think there was a band on, Saxon were on or something on one of the stages, and the sound was off, but they were playing Eagles, and there's me and Steve with a pint of Guinness each, and I went, "Here, Steve, this is funny, isn't it? How ironic is this?" He went, "What?" I said, "Me and you drinking backstage at Download, listening to the Eagles." And he just looks at me and said, don't repeat, don't start all that again. So that it was a mutual agreement when we got back, because they'd already offered the gig to Adrian anyway, even before I joined the band.
Oh, really?
But he wasn't available, or he just didn't fancy it. But I imagine once the band were up there after the Kiss tour, I bet, yeah, of course he fancied it. But it's one of them things. But yeah, as again, back to the original question, I knew they were going to be big. Just on that Kiss tour, seeing all them t-shirts and how many Maiden fans were there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. That's incredible. Um, so around you formed Lionheart, and of course when you formed Lionheart, it was originally with Jess Cox from Tigers of Pantang, right?
Oh, yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And
Well,
and
it was just basically it was Jesse's idea.
okay.
But it didn't have a name. He was either sacked from Tigers or he left Tigers of Pantang. And Jess was a great looking guy, nice, good hair, and we both looked pretty decent when we were younger. And he contacted me. He lived in Newcastle, and he said, "I'm thinking of putting a band together." I said, "Right." And then we got hold of Steve Mann and Rocky Newton, and Frank Noon at the time was living with Rocky in a sort of like big house with separate apartments or separate rooms. And we got together in a rehearsal studio, and then we put down about four songs that we just thrown together, like jamming on the Porter studio, and without trying not to insult Jess or any bad feelings. And we realised that Jess didn't have the voice that we thought he had, and so quickly, although we put the band together and we got a big press release from Sounds, Supergroup and things like that, they were a bit too keen to put all that out before we'd actually established what the band was about, And you've got me, Rocky, and Steve, as I say, doing all the backing vocals, harmonies, and you're going to need a powerful singer. Jess wasn't powerful, not very tuneful, but very low register. Again, like Paul, and so it didn't last very long, because what we said was, look, we can persevere because of the big press release, but are we going to be happy with what we're recording with Jess's voice? It didn't fit our backing vocals. It wasn't strong enough. So we decided to call it a day with Jess. And that's when me, Steve, and Rocky had the problem of working, trying to find decent vocalists that could handle the job above three powerful backing vocals. Clive Edwards came into the band there, and we were up in Fulham, rehearsing in a studio in Fulham that was belonged to one of the managers that we was with, and it was one of the things where we just kept on writing, kept on working, writing songs, recording them on 4-track, 8-track, 12-track. Steve's always been the old producer fingers and master mixer, and he's always worked with recording equipment. So we were doing some fantastic demos. But then we found that we were doing the vocals on our own, and then we got a couple of singers in to do some session work, some sessions for us. uh, for the demos that sounded great. But every record company we went just thought it sounded too good for a rough for a demo, because Steve was such a master of mixing and getting things right. The quality of the demos didn't seem they couldn't believe that they were demos. So
Wow.
they were sort of like a bit doubting how we did the songs. We were doing more sessions than anything. We were doing albums for other bands with backing vocals. We would on the Def Leppard album, Rocky did a lot of backing vocals, the whole album on one of the Def Leppard albums, because they all lived in the same big house. Joe, Elliot, Rocky, Frank, they were all mates. So we went down to the studio and we were just doing little bits of backing vocals. I couldn't even sing the songs now, but it's so long ago in the 80s. And then we got a couple of different singers that came on tour with us. When we went to LA in 1984, we finally got, after 4 years, a CBS in New York and LA finally believed that these demos were demos and that they weren't masters, and this band did exist. It wasn't prefabricated, or what you call it, fabricated. And we got Chad Brown in, who's got a great voice. And then off we went. We got signed to CBS. We went to LA to Sound City Studios, the famous Sound City Studios in Van Nuys.
Yeah.
And 84, and then we recorded Hot Tonight. But there again, down to bad management or bad planning, we went from LA after 3 months recording the album to New York to meet the guys from CBS. And they were saying, "Now we were going to do this tour, we were going to do that tour." REO Speedwagon, Kansas, so many different American bands. And then we come home to England and just sat down and nothing happened. It was just no tours came, nothing. And the band, we just carried on writing and recording. And we thought, what's going to happen now? It was about 85, 86. I contacted David Coverdale. I went down to Boundary Road Studios where they were recording. I met him, I gave him a snooker, give him our demo, give him our album, and he took us out on tour with Whitesnake for about 4 or 5 shows, which was great. But it was all done by off our own backs. We didn't have anyone looking after us.
Wow,
so, as I say, as the band went along, it seemed to sort of fizzle out.
Yeah.
And that's where I come to join Praying Mantis from 1990 to 2005, because although I said to you early time, we still kept in contact, but Rocky was working with Schenker, Steve was working with Schenker, Clive was working with the guys from UFO. So I thought, well, I've got to do something. So, I didn't realise I was going to be with Mantis for 15 years, but it was fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So everything turned out for the best, and we all kept in contact with one another. And that's where we come to the beginning of the interview, when I said we kept in contact and we did that album for Pony Canyon, Lost Archives, and all kept in touch. And then, as you say, 2016, 17, we went and done the Rockingham Festival, and here we are now. Another 2-3 albums later.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think if you love something. I love Lionheart, and it's been my life a lot after Maiden. If you love something, you love the songs and you love the music, and as you said at the beginning of this chat, that you can't stop listening to the Grace of the Dragonfly. We were like that when we did Second Nature, with a few old songs and some new songs, and we put it on and we just thought it's as if we've never been away. And we listened to Second Nature, which give us the boost to do the Reality of Miracles. And as I said before, in lockdown, we were able to do it at home. So it was an easy way of working. And so here we are now. I think I wouldn't mind saying, I'm not saying it's as bad as what it was, but here we are now in 2024 with a fantastic album out, just like 84 in LA. We've got to the point where the album's out. and we're doing exactly the same as we was in 1984. We're sitting here waiting again because there's nothing, you know. I spoke to our record company this morning, Metalville, and whether or not they've got any plans for us this summer. I was hoping to do some festivals through them in Germany. I don't know. It's one of them things where you build yourself up. When I was speaking to you earlier, I got a message from Steve Mann, and I said, "Great, you know, this interview's really going well." And he said, "It's funny, isn't it? Some people get the album, they love the album, like you said, and then other people have never heard of the band."
Yeah.
And that's one of them things where the promotion is so important, you know.
Right. Yeah. 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 Well, I'm definitely going to spread the word, because you know I adore this album. And yeah, do you I mean, I know the album hasn't been out that long, and you know, right now you're kind of focusing on trying to get some shows going. Do you know kind of what's the future of Lionheart at this point? Do you have
Well,
a material you're working on?
that's what I just said. Where do you go?
Yeah.
We said earlier about if people don't buy the album, we don't get any income from Lionheart. So how can we tour? How can we put a tour together? We're doing this festival up in Liverpool in October, Firefest. But it's the same old, same old. You know, Lee's going to be going back out on tour with Sweet. Steve's going to be going out back on tour with Schenker. Rocky's going to go and do this tour with Grand Slam. I've got dates coming up with Maiden United and the Maiden conventions that I do all around Italy and Germany and Holland, and the Maiden United tours. We've just come back. We just, as I said earlier, just come back from Greece, Bulgaria, Germany, Holland. You know, we need to earn an income, and there's nothing I would love more than to tour with Lionheart, but you can't do it without any backing. And as I repeated again, Bruce Dickinson, if you don't buy the record, don't expect to see the band play live, because where we get the money from. Some of these bands that are out there now have either backers or sponsors. They have people putting money behind them to allow them to tour.
Yeah.
How would you meet someone like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows, you know.
Yeah. It's almost like sorry, I was gonna say it's almost like the old days, you know, the old-fashioned days when you had, you know, patrons that would, you know, keep artists alive, you know, feed artists, and you know, especially in Italy, you know, you had, you know, Michelangelo, you know, they all had patrons that, you know, backed them. It's like, I think, you need a patron, a rich patron.
Yeah, a sugar daddy, someone, yeah. You know, it is strange that you know, as you know, that record companies don't put any finance behind any bands anymore. It's just you're in limbo. It's a catch-22. You know, if people don't know about the band, they're not going to know about the album. Thanks to you guys, you help us to promote it and put the name of the band around, but it doesn't reach everyone. You know, we put it on social media, it doesn't reach everyone. And I must admit, I've said this 1,000 times. This album, the reviews that we got and the comments from fans and from friends and from journalists and radio yourself, they listen to the production, they listen to the lyrics, they listen to everything about the album, which is so unusual, because as I said, some people just give a couple of songs to listen to and they go, "Oh, that's not bad," but they give it 8 out of 10. They don't listen to the whole album.
Yeah.
You and other people have listened to the album non-stop over and over again, and we try and make an album where there's no favorites. Every one is a killer track. That's us. We don't use filler songs. We have used covers before. When Japan wanted a bonus track, we have done a few covers, but it's one of them things where this album, we just got our teeth into it, you know, and we really wanted to make it. You could say the feeling slightly was it may be our last album, because you can't keep going over and over and flogging a dead horse, as they say in the UK. You can't keep bashing your head against the wall. If the band's not known, people are not going to put us up there, up the ladder to get us touring. It's a frustrating situation to be in. And I think that showed in Steve's text when he went, I was telling him about you and everything, and And he said, that's fantastic, then. He said, but how come certain places no one's heard of us? How do you get that exposure? How do you increase your promotion so that people do know about you? You know, you can only use the Iron Maiden connection so many times, Michael Schenker so many times. You can only use certain stations that only get through to so many people. It's just so hard. You know, I don't know that it's a magic secret. I don't know how we do it. You know, we're promoting it all the time, and so we don't know. We just have to wait and see. As you said, it's not been out that long, so we can still keep our fingers crossed and pray that more people will hear it or listen to it or buy it. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to do everything in my power to get it out there. So, yeah, right.
Cool.
You know, I adore it. So, yeah. Well, Dennis, this has been a truly an honor and an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Well,
Thank you
it's
so
always
very
a
much.
pleasure for me, mate, because there's people like you that make me feel a lot positive, more positive. Sometimes I sit at home and yeah, it gets a little bit depressing.
Yeah.
So when you talk to someone and they tell you they've listened to your work and your heart and soul has gone into that, and yeah, it's always nice to hear. And so be it. You know, that's why we do these interviews, because you know, that's why every show I do with Maiden United or even on the Maiden conventions, I'm still doing the same thing I did with Iron Maiden 45 years ago, which is go straight down to the front afterwards and sign and selfies and all that. And that's what I did in Maiden. That's what we do in Lionheart, and also do it now. Still, I do a meet and greet before the Maiden shows out on the conventions. I do a meet and greet in about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I go to the bar before we go on stage, so I'm amongst all the fans. They can come up to me and sign selfies, and also after the show, I'll go back out for anyone that's late coming and do it all again. And I think that's why a lot of Maiden fans like and give me a bit of respect, because they say, you know, he's approachable. He's like one of the gang. He's not up there with a big head and a big ego. And that's the way I want to. That's the way I want to be known, as one of the boys, one of the gang, one of the crew. That sort of thing, you know.
Nice. That's great. I love that. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been great. For those of you watching, go pick this album up right now. Grace of the Dragonfly. It's fantastic. You know, this is in my opinion, this is the opus of Lionheart right here. This is the end all be all. And yeah, and wherever fine albums are sold, go pick this up. You know, CD. You can download it, I'm sure, as well on all the websites. For those of you also watching, if you look in the description below, there are links to Lionheart's pages. Check them out. Like I said, if you're not familiar with Lionheart, get familiar. Such a great band, such an amazing band. So Dennis, thank you so very much. This has been fantastic.
No, God bless you. God bless you. Thank you.